This is Karen with newclevelandradio.net, and it is time for Avoid the Maze. And we are doing Avoid the Maze today for a company in New York, EMPKTPR. Do a lot of interviews for them. I've met a lot of very talented people, and I'll tell you, it is exciting because my music library is just immense now. I can now take pride in telling my brother I can listen to as much music as he does. And he's a music producer. So there you go. Our guest today is Ellen Woloshin.
Mm-hmm.
I said it right. Good. And Ellen, as I told you before we went live, I was listening to your newest album. And the first song I actually listened to all the way through. And there was something about your voice. I was trying to figure it out rather than listen to the music, which I shouldn't do, but I do. And then I clicked on the next one and I started listening to bits and pieces. And it was, I know why I'm listening to the voice. It is so unique. I mean, your quality. So tell us, how did you develop into this entertainment field, which is not an easy place to rest your head at night?
Believe me, my parents and my father was in quote the business and hoped I would probably do something else, but at the same time encouraged me. So I kind of got the double message: do it, but don't do it. Especially when I was younger. So my dad was in advertising, and he went from advertising, became a jingle producer in the height of the commercial business. So, that's kind of what I knew. So I remember when I was 10 years old, I said, can I sing commercials? Because I knew kids were singing commercials, and he's like, go to your room, basically. It's like, so, when I got to be like around 19, I was in college, and one of the biggest campaigns he had was McDonald's, and you deserve a break today. And, it was a very small knit group who sang commercials and made all this money. And they had basically heard every voice at that point in the clique of 30 people. So I sang a demo and didn't think much of it, went back to St. Louis where I was going to college. And, and basically, I followed that path because that's what I knew, because my dad was in the business, and it was a double-edged sword because, I'm the producer's daughter, but but that was, I probably would not have followed that path if I had not had a father in that business, because that was my connection to music. But first I was a classical pianist. That was what I did most of until I was like 17. When I started 16, 17, I started singing. My father was a violinist originally who turned into an ad man. So, but that's what I knew. So that's what it was definitely a way to pursue music. And to, get professional skills, which I got a lot of, so I got a lot of grief too, because it was hard. I didn't like being, it was hard because I think some of his competitors maybe were, a little reticent to hire me. So it was, it's like everyone thinks, oh, it's great, or dad's in the business. It's mixed, it's both. So that was my start.
And I've talked to a number of people very similar to your background, where their parent or somebody very close in their family was involved in the industry. And they came along and they said, well, hey, I have an interest. And usually it's, hey, this was a crazy thing for me to do, go in a different direction. But if it's something that you really love to do or think you would love to do, I think it's wonderful when you have that opportunity to go out and try it. And I wish everybody would, take that leap of faith. It doesn't have to be that, hey, you're going to be singing all the jingles on the radio for the rest of your life, or you're going to be a Broadway star. But what it means is that you get to fulfill something for yourself by experimenting. And it sounds like you, in some ways, you had to do that because, people were looking at you, expecting you to be one way, and maybe that's not the way you wanted them to hear you.
Well, one thing my father did say to me, he goes, don't make this an end, make it a means. So he had like the foresight to, even though he was getting a lot of success at this point with this business, he was seeing a bigger picture. And, for me, the turning point was, I also wound up teaching a workshop in jingles, which was also very helpful. I got a lot of confidence from that. I actually liked teaching a lot. And one of my quote students was a really good songwriter. So we became a songwriting team and a performing duo for a good many years. And that's where I started getting performing experience. And I had done some songwriting while I was doing jingles, but this was really the beginning of getting out there and honing these skills. I didn't have those performing skills at all because I had recording skills, which they're both important,
Right.
but I kind of did it sort of backwards, I guess. A lot of people wind up in the studio after they've tried to launch other careers. So
it's not an easy career,
no.
as we've already talked about. In fact, it's interesting. I have two sons. One is an attorney, and his love of music, he has turned into an entertainment attorney on the weekends. So he has his corporate job and he has his love, so that he's around the music and around all the festivals. I have a younger son who's torn between music and performance and sports. And he's working in the sports industry, but whenever he has that opportunity to perform, he gets out and he performs. And I think it's important for all of us to understand that we have more than one interest, or more than one we can do. As you pointed out, you love teaching. Was that something that you would have thought of, that you would have wanted to do?
No, because I sort of have high standards, or maybe I remember when I was asked to teach this class, I thought, well, I'm not a teacher. I don't have any teaching skills. And really, it wasn't the teaching skills per se, although I think they're important, because there are a lot of people that know their fields really well, but they don't make good teachers. You have to have incredible patience for other people, which I do for other people, not as much for myself, but for other people. And it was really knowing the subject was the reason that I was asked to teach the class. And it was, we had here in New York at this time, like the Learning Annex and these adult continuing kind of classes where, they weren't expensive and you don't get a degree or credit, but they're short-lived and it gives people a taste of, the industry that they're looking at. But no, I never thought, although sometimes I think about, other careers, what would I have picked? I just went through a jury trial where I was on the jury, literally ended a week ago. And I thought, wow, not that I didn't miss my calling. I just thought, wow, this would have been so interesting to be a trial attorney. I mean, there's several things that would have been a forensic psychologist. I mean, that would have been, I majored in psychology. So, so I do have a lot of other interests, but it's very hard to walk away from, like, I don't want to say a talent. We have many talents or several talents, not just one, but I walked away from it once. I took a break for 2 years and did something else. And, when I went back, I said, this is it. I'm probably not going to turn away again. So I started young. I started at 19. So at the grand old age of 23, I took a break for 2 years.
Well, and you know what? You probably needed that to reinforce this is what you wanted to do. In this podcast, Avoid the Maze, we talk about things like that, we grow up thinking this is the path I want to take. And I'm going to follow this path no matter what. And we keep going down it and down it. And finally, one day we wake up and we go, there's got to be more. I'm missing things along the way because all I'm doing is taking one step in front of another. And when we take that opportunity, and sometimes we don't have the luxury of a year or two or more, but even if you take the luxury of a little bit of time each day to identify and look at things. It makes such a difference. And I'm sure made a difference when you went back into music,
Definitely.
because now this is what you knew that you wanted to do.
Well, just more life experience in a different field. I actually worked for Chase Manhattan Bank for 2 years, and it was like the Monopoly game comes to life, you know. I was in a management training program. I mean, it was the farthest thing. I mean, even my own parents were like, what are you, what are you doing? It's like, wait, you're giving me too many messages here. It's like, it was a good thing for the short-lived time. You know, I had another experience. I had a corporate experience. I wore a suit. You know, I know what that was like, you know.
So tell us about this new album that you've put together. From what I gather, some of it is your original material, and some of it is music from the songbook, which, I think is absolutely beautiful. So tell me how you made the decision of putting these songs all together.
So basically, since I've been performing, I've always sung standards. I've always been in favor of singing a great song. I don't care who wrote it. I mean, as a singer, I just want to sing good songs. Then there's the business part, where music businesses, do you write your own songs? Because the money's in the publishing, and there's that whole pressure of, but then they, on the other hand, they're like, well, take a famous song and make it, but that's after you've already written all your own songs. And
Right.
so from record 1, so this is record 3, I was doing covers. My second album was more original. Most of it was, because I thought I have to fulfill that need. I have to write all my own songs. I had a writing partner. We did every song on that second album was original. However, the review I got, there was one review I got on that second album, a man in England who wrote a column called Art of the Torch Singer. And he gave me I would say the best review I ever got, not so much because he said nice things, but because I felt really understood. And I thought, well, why is he writing about me as a torch singer? I didn't think of myself as a torch singer, because I think of Billie Holiday, I think, all these. And then when he defined it, I realized, well, I guess I am, because he defined it as someone who sings about love and loss and what might have been. And I'm like, well, that sounds like me.
Yeah.
So this idea started brewing in my head years before I did this album of, well, I'm a pop singer, but as time moved on, the definition of pop became like what we're hearing now on the radio. And, probably in the last decade, when people say pop, they think of, Billie Eilish and Taylor Swift, but I really am a pop singer. So I had to redefine in my own mind what that meant. And so this thing popped in my head called Pop Torch. And I was doing more shows. Like, there was a big gap where I was mostly just performing and trying to write new things. And I started calling the show Pop Torch, where I always mix standards and well-known songs with my own. That's something I always did. And then I thought, well, I'm going to do an album like this. And it's like, it just kind of, I let it organically develop. And as the pandemic was beginning, I was working on one of my originals. I barely got going, and then we were shut down. And so I had time to, let it continually brew. And I really just, I thought, this is either going to work, or this mashup, or it's going to be a hot mess, but I think it all worked. I mean, these different decades, because hopefully the glue was me, this being the same singer,
Right.
and that it had a sentiment, or, that's the thing about, like, when people release singles, I feel like you don't get to see the whole thread of the album. And this definitely had a concept. So I called it Pop Torch because it was in my head for like quite a while. So that's kind of how it happened.
What I loved about it is so many so many streaming venues, when I go to listen to music, there is either too much sound in the background, or the performer's voice is just not clear.
Right. And you can't understand the words either.
Yeah. And it really bothers me, especially lately, when I've gone to a live concert or a live off-Broadway show, Now I wear hearing aids,
Mhm.
and I'll be sitting there and it's like, I hear the music, I see your mouth going, but I have no idea what the words are. And I had talked to my brother about this, who's a producer, and I said, what is going on? He said, well, the people who are mixing the music, they're doing it for the younger crowd. The younger crowd doesn't really care what the words are. They want to hear all the sounds. And I said, but I want to hear the words. And that was the first thing I recognized when I was listening today. I can hear the words. I know what you're singing about. And yet I can hear all the tonality in it. And I can hear the music in the background, but I hear the words. What a difference.
It's interesting because the Gregory Toroyan, who arranged most of the songs, he was my first accompanist back when I was like 27 or something. And what's so great about him, first of all, he's a great pianist, but the lyric, it's all about the lyric. And I even got pushed out of my comfort zone with Magic, which was a song by America, and Blue Skies. I mean, Greg, it's all built around the lyric and the importance of it. And he does a lot of he basically does a lot of cabaret. That's his main. He works with singers primarily. And it's interesting because my grandfather used to yell at me all the time because he says that I was slurring my words. I don't speak with good diction, which I probably don't. My mother took elocution lessons. She has the most beautiful diction, but I sing with really great diction. I don't know why that is. I really don't know, but just the way I sing. But the thing is, I do notice, I mean, I also, I write for Music Connection magazine, and I kind of fell into it, and I've been doing it for 12 years now. And I go here, I've heard a lot of bands, and a lot of times I have to refer to a CD and I have to keep playing it over on what did they say? What, because I want to talk about the song. I'm like, what did they say? What did they say? I can't tell what they're saying. And I have to keep playing it and hope that I quoted it correctly, you know?
Well, it's funny because at Christmas time, my son was in town and we went to see Hamilton.
Oh,
And I loved it, but I could not understand the words at all.
wow.
And he said to me, you were supposed to listen to the album first before you came
Well,
here. And
what if you don't?
I said, typically I would go to the play first and then
Right.
go listen to the album.
Right.
But I asked him why. And he basically said the same thing. He said, Mom, it's not the words. I sort of get what they're saying. He said, but what about the tones and the quality? I said, yeah, I could hear all that. But I
Right.
wanted to hear the story and the words. And so he just sort of looked at me and goes, Mom, not going to find it here. And I thought, you're right, because I've been noticing that more and more.
Yeah.
Which
Well,
is sad.
yeah. It's interesting because I got on a bunch of playlists lately, and somebody wrote me back that they have this thing called Groover where they're required to answer you with some kind of either explanation why they didn't put you on the playlist or why they did put you on the playlist. And I think these people were French, so it was very broken English, but what they conveyed was that they were kind of tired of the same I don't know, just sort of they had a phrase for it where it's like it's mostly about the sounds, and they were talking about how the placement of the words in this one song, Keep Your Heart, which is the second song on the album, is the one that I was promoting, and that they basically were saying, that all the elements were working. I guess you could hear the words, the arrangements placed in such a way that this happens here, and but some of the criticism I've gotten when people didn't pick me for the playlist was, we don't hear modern sounds. It's like, but I'm not that person.
Right.
Not that person. And that's always been a struggle for me. It's like my second album, guy did a wonderful production job, different producer. But sometimes I feel like I still sing, you can still understand all the words, but I feel like the production, it wasn't upstaging me. It's just that the thing about this one, why this one is kind of, I'm gonna say my favorite, but it's like saying this is my favorite child, but it's like, because it really is so crafted around the story, the nuances are all very, I feel like it's almost perfect to me. Like I always say, they all outdid themselves,
Yep.
everyone who worked on it, was very carefully, so it was a great experience. I mean, they're all, but took a year at least.
Well, they say anything that's worthwhile doesn't happen overnight, so that's okay
Sure.
that it took that long. So where are you performing mostly? Are you mostly performing in New York or?
Well, most of the times I feel about performing in New York. You really only need one venue. So I mostly go down to the Lower East Side to review bands. And I'm pretty sure that they're not, I mean, most of the people are pretty good performers. The songwriting is probably the weakest if I had to make a generalization, but they're pretty good performers, most of them. But I'm like, they can't be making any money here. And how many people are going to keep schlepping down to Lower East? I mean, not people that I know, I just don't see it. So I feel if you have one venue, which I always like the Triad, which is on 72nd, and it's more Upper West Side. And then mostly I went out of town, because I really want new people to hear
Sure.
the material. And I like to have done a lot of library concerts in the tri-state area, because some of the libraries have really great programs. And you also know what you're going to get paid because they have budgets. So it's not like, well, I paid the band and I went in the hole, which a lot of people do. And you do that for so long, and then you're like, no, I'm an adult now. I can't keep doing that. I have to pay people and pay myself. So but in the last few months though, because I've been working so hard on promoting this and getting stuff and redoing my website, so I don't have anything lined up, so I have to get back to that. You can only do so many things at one time.
Well, too many of us think that we can do everything all at once.
No.
I have to admit, that's what I've been thinking for a while. I had an accident about 9 weeks ago, and I'm still recovering from it. And I'm realizing every day I have to look at my schedule and I have to take something off of it because I want it to look good. So my schedule's overbooked. And then I realize when I get up in the morning, no, I have to pick and choose. And so this morning, my husband said to me, why aren't you picking and choosing initially? He said, because he said, you're overwhelmed in the morning saying these are the things you can't do. And I said, you're right. I said, but it's the way I was brought up.
No,
Yeah.
I know.
I keep hoping.
No, I feel the same way. My mother, my mother's incredible. My mother's going to be 92 in a few weeks. My mother still works full time. My mother plays golf. My mother drives one, but she was always, even when I was growing up and she wasn't working for the time, most of them, my brother got the advantage of her going to work when I went to college, but she has to be this way, and I think I also learned from her. Sometimes I realize, why are you putting so much pressure on yourself? It's like I'll go to the gym, I'll say, I'll go tomorrow, I'll go the next day, and the next day. I'm like, wait a second, what? That kind of thing where, because I'm also a list maker. So it's
Sounds familiar.
Yeah. But it's true. It's hard you have to learn to have compassion for yourself. It's hard,
Absolutely. And we take a lot of those lessons that our parents laid on us, and they thought they were giving us great lessons. I remember right before my mother passed away, she said to me, are you a famous broadcaster? And I looked her straight in the eye and I said, I sure am, especially when I'm broadcasting from here. And I'm not sure she quite got it that day, but I realized that's how we have to feel about ourselves. We have to be at our best. And if you can feel at your best, whether you're on, Broadway performing or in your favorite little pub, as long as you're doing what you love.
Yeah. And I think the thing is, I'm going to say when you're younger, but probably more so when you're younger. I remember, I used to think this was the end all be all, that I really didn't really think that, but I mean, my parents were very driven people, both of them. Driven, 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 you know, and so you learn to be driven. And so but I realized, you know, as years go by, it's like, you know, it's interesting because for the magazine, my husband takes the photos, and that's not his profession, but you know, the budget they give me, you know, whatever, is not, I'm
Right.
not gonna be hiring Scavula. So it's like, you know, he basically said, I'm a published photographer now, you know, and even though that's not his profession, it's something he liked to do and wanted to do and gets to do. And you know, and I realized, like, wow, I've gotten to do for whatever it's worth what I wanted to do for most of my life. And you know, I have to, you know, unfortunately, because the culture we live in is it's so, I don't want to say money and success based.
Yep.
It's really screwed up, because in the end, it's like, it's really all icing on the cake. It's like, you know, so we better focus on the cake, because that's really the heart of it. And I've learned to do that much more over the years. And, you know, whatever happens, I mean, I actually just submitted this album to the Grammys like 2 days ago. My engineer did. And, you know, it's like, I said to him, well, I probably have a chance of winning Mega Millions before I win a Grammy, but you know what?
Oh,
Why not?
yeah.
I put it in the right category. It's definitely in the right
Right.
category, but, you know, hey, just to be
And
able to do it, you know?
well, and if you don't submit it, you don't have
Right.
a
And
chance.
and I said to him, I said, Jonathan, you know, you should submit as the engineer. Oh, I don't know, to be up against so and so. I said, so what? You're a really good engineer. Why wouldn't you? You know? So he did, luckily.
Well, I know we have teased my brother over the years, you know. So you submitted for this award. So what did you hear back? And he goes, nothing. Okay. And then next time we'll hear, I've been nominated. Okay. Do you think you're going to win? Oh no, it's going to go to somebody else. The only way we have found out he has won any awards is when we visit his house. He doesn't talk about them because he says he's worked on so many projects, and some that are so much better than the ones he won an award for.
Oh, sure.
So he said, you know what? I'm grateful that I won. That was great. But I can't stop holding that trophy, because if I stop just holding it up, I'm not going to go anywhere. He said,
Well,
so
it's
we have
like
to keep working.
it's like when you play tennis, like you hit a great shot, and if you admire the shot too long, you miss the next one. So,
I never thought of it that way. I've got to remember that one.
because I do that. I mean, I'm not a big tennis player, but when I do play and I'm like, oh, that was a really nice one. And then, you know, you don't have time to like stop and look at the shot.
Right. Yeah, I wonder if Serena Williams had done that, if she would have won as many matches as she did.
That was a fascinating, I've got to tell you, that movie was fascinating to see how her father pulled that off. Unbelievable. That was the most interesting part of the movie, how he was able to, it's almost like unbelievable, you know? So,
Wow. So tell us how we can find your CD, and what other music you might have out there, how we can follow you.
okay, so mostly I'm on probably every platform that people know, and the big ones, of course, Spotify. It's distributed throughout all the platforms. If you want to buy the CD, I don't know how many people have CD players anymore. I still do. It's on my site, which is myname.com, ellenwoloshin.com. I know people probably can't spell it just hearing
Well,
it.
we'll make sure it's in the notes.
Yes.
So they can.
And yeah, so they can buy it in the store. This is the first time I've actually have merch. I never did merch, but it's been stressed to me by my TikTok PR people that you need to have merch. So I have products there. I've tested them all. I own them all. So they're all, you know, and then I don't have vinyl yet. I'm thinking about it, but which I find very hilarious because I grew up with records. So it's like, you know, vinyl, okay. But for some reason people want to, so that's maybe in the future, but mostly on my site or on Spotify and all those iTunes, all the platforms, and many I've never even heard of. So
Okay.
yeah.
Well, we'll make sure as much of that information is in the show notes. If you ever get to Cleveland, let me know because I would love to come and sit in the audience. I would.
That would be great. I would, I've made it out of the tri-state area to Nashville and to Scotland to
Oh,
perform.
okay.
I was a guest artist in my friend's show, but yeah, no, I would, that would be great. I think my husband's made, well, made it to Columbus on business, but I went to school in the Midwest. I went to school in Missouri, so yeah.
So you've been around. You've
I've been through the Midwest, but I've been to Columbus because you had to drive through Columbus to get to St. Louis, but I don't think I've been to Cleveland. Don't think. Oh, yes, I did. I applied to Oberlin.
Oh, okay.
That was my dream school, which I didn't get in, and I'm upset. In the long run, I think I went to where I should have gone. But yes, that was when I went to Cleveland.
And that is not far from here at all. In fact, on a nice fall day, we usually will take a drive down there because it's just pretty and just a nice getaway for a little bit. So, well, I want to thank you, Ellen, for joining us today. I'm going to make sure that I have your music playing when my husband gets home because I think he'll see a big smile on my face, and I think it's about time. So,
is there any place I can see this show? Like,
I will send the link to Beatrice. She will have it, and you can post it and share it with whoever you want.
Absolutely. It would be really great. And it was really wonderful to meet you. And I will definitely let you know if I can make it out to Cleveland.
I appreciate it. Have a great day now.
You too. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.